Happy October. We're working on a Beetlejuice render, kind of like a miniature of, like how they have the little town in the beginning of the film. Well, it's throughout the whole two movies now of the stuff. But yeah, this is the render right here. I found this photo online from, I believe it's a marketing photo or something like that for the movie. And I thought it would be fun to I extended it just using Photoshop's generative extension AI thingy that it's got, which is kind of crazy. And I figured this would be a cool little reference photo for what we're trying to create today. Obviously, we got to import our settings here, so we'll just run through that real quick. Here's another cool thing I found in Blender, though. I always wondered why the background images, if you set the opacity to 100%, the color management wasn't quite perfect inside of this. You can see this right above my head right here. The view as render checkbox here, if you check this, it'll actually do proper color management. I don't know why. Apply render part of, I don't know why anyone would not want this checked. And let's go ahead and delete our default cube, and we're just going to start by adding in a plane. I usually like to do this to set up our camera settings and set the orientation of the camera. Since we're only using this as a reference image and not as a perfect, we're trying to recreate this image exactly. We don't need to use anything I think it's F-Spy. There's some plugins out there that allow you to automatically set up your stuff. I'm going to delete this light for right now. And let's go ahead and create a new collection here called Layout. And we'll just drop the plane under Layout. And I'm going to change this collection to Camera. As for the camera itself, I think that having it set to 50 millimeters is probably okay. So now that I'm thinking about it, you're probably not going to want the millimeters to be too large, especially if your focal length should be not too large, especially if it's a miniature. So we might set this to 22 or 25 or something like that. Next up, let's go ahead and just drop this camera kind of in the front view here. And we'll find the orientation in which we want this at. Now, I like to use this grid as a means of being able to see how the lines are kind of lining up, as well as our plane. Now, we don't have a flat surface. This is a mountain, so it's not exactly like we're going to be able to get the plane to line up with any surface inside of our photo here. But what we can do is rotate around on the 3D cursor here, and as long as I grab my camera now and rotate, we should be able to find the correct orientation this way. Okay, great. Now this works for me. I now have this plane here. What we can do also is just use this as our general kind of ground that we want to have. And by that, I would say let's just extrude it downwards and then scale it out, upwards a little bit. Extrude it out, scale that out. There you go. And basically right now we're not going to try to get it too close. We're just going to extrude it downwards and then outwards. Okay, now I got this really weird pan-shaped thing. I was going to take this now and then let's go ahead and add in a multi-resolution. But now that we have this, I just added a multi-res into here, and then if we swap this over to sculpt mode, we can actually start sculpting some of the areas to fit a little bit better. I like to use the grab tool in order to do that, just like an elastic deform or the grab tool. And then later we're going to procedurally go in and create kind of the rest of the landscape, kind of following our reference video a little bit, just for some good ideas on how we want this to all to look. And then now, if we go over here, we could actually just smooth out some of this. We don't need to have too much, especially like these lines. We want to get rid of those. This is all from our cube earlier. We do a little bit of that. Let's go ahead and hit subdivide now. And then if we use the draw tool on here, actually going to minimize this. And let's just keep this window open here so that way we could see everything just as a reference. If we go to draw now, we can draw in some of these extra divots and things like that. Yeah, my method though of doing this is just scribbling basically. And then later we'll be using distribution of points to basically put up like a little like dots and stuff like that all over the thing. I think though we're gonna need this like mountains back here. A easy way of doing that. Let's just go back over here into object mode real quick again. I'm going to set this to 4 just so we can see what we did. I'm going to move this cursor way over there just for now. And if we go ahead and add in under mesh, we add in a landscape. And if you guys don't have this landscape option, all you have to do is go into edit, preferences, and then search for a.n.t, and then make sure that ant landscape is enabled. Then we could go ahead and, you know, scale that upwards or whatever. But now we've got ourselves a landscape. I want to make sure our camera, though, isn't clipping. I was talking a little bit about this earlier. If you change this end clipping here to 1,000, it's so far away, it's hard to move. Scale this guy up, but we'll scale him up on individual origins. There we go. Cool. I think that one works. I'm just going to duplicate this now, and then we'll just rotate this around this direction. Hell yeah. Okay, that works pretty nice for the landscape back there. I still think this looks a little big, and we can use even displacement maps and things like that to make it feel smaller. So let's do that first by using a multi-res. I'm going to subdivide this a few times. Subdivide it like 3 times there. And then if we use a displacement map, so we'll displace it. We'll hit new to make sure it's a new texture. And make sure that this is after your multi-res, so that way you're subdividing first. And then under your texture settings here, it's currently set to image or movie, which is pretty cool. Like, you can import your own displacements if you want to. But for us, we could just swap this over to clouds, you know, something that's going to be procedural inside of our actual Blender project here. And then all we have to do is just change our size. And then if we go over and change our strength as well, we're basically going to want to make this really small. So 0.01 maybe. And with our size here, that just makes it really big. We'll just maximize the tininess of it, like to a 0.0 whatever that is. Now you can see that we get all of this extra detail here. Now we can blow out our machine by just hitting subdivide a couple times just to make sure that this looks, you know, nice and clean. Make sure it says shade smooth. And then I like to, if you want to, add in a subdivide surface after your displacement. And this will smooth everything over really nicely. It also frees your computer and maybe blow it up in the process. But, you know, that is just a risk that we are all willing to take here. This is pretty nice. But we might want... Actually, that's really good. Let's go ahead and turn off the viewport of that. I'm going to set that to 1 as well. We're going to turn off the viewport of both of these. We don't need to see that inside of our viewport. But with this now, go ahead and select this guy and then shift select this guy and press Control C. And we might be able to copy the modifiers. So now if we go over to here, it has the exact same modifiers as this guy. Control C, by the way, is another handy little preference that you need to go enable. I think it's called, copy attributes menu up here inside of preferences. Just make sure that's enabled. So that way when you press Control C, it does this. I do personally believe that when you're doing landscapes, that the parts that are closest to the camera, that you want those to kind of be more hand sculpted. I prefer to sculpt these things. So just like we were doing earlier, we'll just swap over to sculpt mode now. And I'm just using the draw brush and just kind of like drawing downwards. Now right now all of my it has the plus button, but that's because I extruded my plane downwards, and that's the reason why everything's inverted. If I wanted to flip this, I can. I just have to go into edit mode. For right now, I'm fine with having it backwards. I love me a good miniature though. And honestly, like, I think I want to do a short film at some point where I do CG stuff that looks like miniatures. Now, visual effects can be really anything, and I think that's what's interesting is when people just get on the CG hate train and then they don't even think about, you know, how many invisible VFX there are. They just talk about the stuff that they've seen. And I get it. Some of the stuff that they talk about that they've seen is, you know, not super great. And I'm not going to argue with anyone about that. Like, that's true. But, you know, have a little bit of an open mind. Just going to now make some of these areas a little bit sharper around some of the creases. I think that works really nicely for rocks and things like that. Again, we're going to smooth all of this over with probably a subdivide surface or something like that. Okay, we're going to have to go in later and then do some more sculpting on this once we actually have the house here, because we need the formation of this ground to kind of fit with where the house is positioned and then how people are walking, right? Because technically speaking, there's going to be like a path here, I believe. Okay, starting out with the house, let's just get a cube set up. Let's see. I'm going to just take this and we'll scale it down for a second. We just need to line this up with the house here, kind of just like the platform of the house. Since it's a miniature, you know, things aren't exactly going to line up. Let's see what this ledge looks like here. Just extrude that outwards again a little bit and pop that up. So this is like a platform for this thing. So I guess we could build the stairs. Those stairs will roughly be in this area right here. Okay, so that's right there. And then we'll have like a little house thingy that's on this corner. I'm going to take this, and if we just duplicate him, grab him on the x-axis here, then grab him on the y-axis. This just makes it a little complicated because the whole house is, you know, on a tilt axis. I think this whole thing could probably go further this way. So this plane right here, if we just select it now, we can extrude it upwards, and it's like this little add-on part. Right now, I'm just going through and blocking out the different parts of the house as like cubes, and then we can go in and kind of create a lot of the custom details later. Are westerns dead? I guess that's a good question. I was debating with my buddies last night about, actually, funny enough. I don't think westerns are dead. I think like cliche films are. So if you're, you know, I think you could still have a western hero. Oh, that's pretty good right there. It's interesting because you talk to a lot of people and they'll tell you like, oh yeah, western's dead. You know, don't try making a western film. And I would rather not believe that. Scale that out. We're just going to create ourselves this little pizza shape here. I'm going to put that right here. We're just going to have a bit of an angle to it. I just think that's kind of cool, actually, even. That's not necessarily going to line up, but it doesn't matter. I kind of want to extrude that inwards and upwards. I'm going to take this guy here, and if we just duplicate him over to this section here, I'm going to rotate that by 90 degrees. I don't really want him peeking out. Yeah, I think that's good. And then we'll just go ahead and select this whole bottom here and then just stretch it out to the bottom. Let's take this. You think it's very complicated to make a simpler, fun movie these days? Is it complicated because I feel like less people would watch it? Is that why it's complicated? I don't know if people want to watch just good fun. I guess that's my point, is maybe people don't want to watch it. Maybe they do. Maybe we're seeing a turn of the tides. Probably not. That's cool. I like that. I do like that it's just off canter. Let's take him and just extend it outwards a little bit. That way this platform I can actually have... We can literally just duplicate this guy. Just kind of try to have the 90 degrees line up, but at the same time, it's okay if it's a little bit off. Perfect. Now I'll just take this around the corner. I just need 2 over here. Great. So now all of them are just slightly rotated in different directions. And let's see, we have to make the stairs on this back platform here. I guess we'll make the stairs here, and we can just duplicate these stairs to right here. You can't really see it because of the snake, but there is a set of stairs there. Where did did I accidentally move our actual... Whoops. That's hilarious. Rotate Z -90. Accidentally got rid of our little house thing there. I kind of want to trim in this cube down here. So let's just select all of the vertices associated with that. And if we scale it in, just move that down. Perfect. Now this edge here of this guy, we will move back to there. And then this edge of our front porch, I suppose actually we'll probably want this to come out a little bit further. Yeah, about that far, so that way it's further than that front porch. And then we can grab this face and bring it out a little bit as well. Okay, we're gonna see if I can create some of these slat things. Let's try to duplicate this and just make a few of these manually. It's pretty straightforward, and then we will bevel those later just to add a little bit of extra detail. With a lot of the trimming, we have kind of like these cube-like shapes that we can have go around everything. So for instance, let's add in another cube right now. And we're just going to say shift, select this guy, and then hit Control C, and then copy rotation. And again, that's just that modifier that I added in earlier. And now all of a sudden, we can just line this up. We're just going to line up that edge right there. We're just trying to create a nice little extra pop-out trim that's happening on this. You can do that just with this cube. So now if we go ahead and just select this top face here. Now, this isn't a straight line, so we're going to have some issues here. But let's go ahead and just grab it by the Z-axis and then move it up. We're just going to try to manually align it. And we can duplicate this. So let's go ahead and duplicate this on the Y-axis here. And for this cube, this should just line up with everything. So we don't actually have to reline up the top. It's just moving it over. I don't think we need it on the back side there, but that helps with the trim. And let's go ahead and start doing that to some different spots. So we want to add some trim, for instance, on, let's just do this corner next. There is a button called where you can bridge these together. The problem is that I'm live streaming, and when I'm live streaming, I use different shortcuts than, so you can't press the, I believe it's F3 command in order to pull that up. Then just type for bridge. Otherwise, you just have to manually do it like what I just did. Okay, here's what I'm thinking. We could build these stairs. I can manually make them, which let's just do, because I think manual looks better in this particular instance. So I'm going to disable everything, and then I'm going to rotate these like ever so slightly, and then just duplicate. And we don't need that many stairs, but you know, you just want your like creaky stairs. We'll go ahead and add another cube in. And gosh, I don't know why I made these at an angle. I don't know why I decided to make them at an angle, but I did, and we're living with that, okay? I just wanted it to be even more chaotic than it already was. Yeah, no, totally. Blender scale is going to be different than every other scaling thing. But the other thing to note is that every time you camera track, your scaling is going to be different. 3D camera tracking is notorious for that, where your measurements are just going to be all completely off. But if you're doing synthesize, you're probably setting your measurements there, correct? Gonna line that up, and then we're just going to duplicate this upwards and create ourselves some railways. And you know what? I'm actually going to not apply all transforms. I'm going to apply specifically just the scale, because we don't want to apply the rotation. But now we can go ahead and add in some nice bevels to this wood here. And that's already going to make it look a lot better. Go back into sculpt mode here. And then we're going to set this sculpt view here to like a 3. I just basically want to get this overall ground. Like, I'm not doing any detailed sculpting. Just going to grab this overall ground and kind of just like level it out where the stairs are. Let's take all of this. Okay. And we're just going to join it. And we're going to do the same for this other side. Join it. And then we're going to say apply scale. And then we're going to apply the scale. Select everything. And then just add a slight bit of bevel to it. Select everything. Add a slight bit of bevel to it. Fancy. Okay. And then, you know, there's another thing we could technically do here that might be pretty nice. Go ahead and just add in like, you know, a little nice edge loop here. Edge loop there, and if you just add in a little bit of bowing to these things, just adds a nice little extra detail to the stairs. And even this right here, I would say let's add the cursor to that, and then if we rotate on the 3D cursor, even just having it out a little bit, so that way it feels like this thing is falling over outwards. Now, once you have all of that done, I kind of just recommend grabbing these, and then we're just going to join them all together. We're just going to duplicate this and then rotate it, you know. Make sure we're doing median point here. Add that to this other side of the house. Probably about right here-ish. And then again, let's grab this whole land, and then we're just going to sculpt it around these stairs. I'm going to select all of these, and let's just join them all together. I'm going to apply the scale on them, and then we're just going to add some a bit of bevel to them. Just make them a little bit more interesting. This whole trim here, let's go ahead and apply the scale to it. And again, select everything. Add just a bit of a bevel to it. Again, nothing crazy. I'm going to select this whole thing up here and just scale it up a little bit. Let's create like a little bevel up here as well. Going to extrude, scale it out, extrude. And then this whole section, let's just go ahead and select it and actually just make it its own. So if we say Y, press Y, and then that way it makes its own object. And then these bottom faces here, let's do this. We're going to hide this for a second, and then we're going to select these bottom vertices here. Fill those, and let's just add a nice little bevel to it. You know, nothing crazy. Just to give it a nice little ring at the top. And then we can add in the fence posts up here. New cube. Select that. Control C. Copy rotation. I would say just like copy rotate. Well, we don't need to copy anything else really. And let's go ahead and just extrude this out. Or we don't even need to extrude it. We just need to grab it on the Z-axis. There we go. And this guy, I just might scale it down a little bit. I'm going to use an array, and then another array. That's pretty good. And then, let's see, we're going to just duplicate this guy. And let's see, let's delete everything. If you press Alt-S, you can scale down and just make it like a thinner, you know, pipe or whatever this is called. And now, let's just use another array, and then we'll set that to 0. And I think that distance is good, and we're just going to have this go all the way to the other side. And now I'm just going to use another array. That's cool. Let's take this whole thing, though, and then we're just going to duplicate it. And then we're going to rotate it on its Z-axis 90 degrees. And we'll just line this up over here. And then next up, let's add in another little cube. Scale it down. Probably about that size is fine. Again, copy the rotation. I'm going to just line this up with this guy here. We'll just grab this face and grab it on the x-axis and go all the way to the other side. And then we're just going to duplicate that on the z-axis and just kind of do it a little bit at the top, just a little bit of a pointy top to it. Okay, and then we're just going to add in another array. And again, we're just blocking this out first, and then we can add some more details afterwards. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and add some points into this. Let's just grab the top of this guy and then extrude it upwards and then scale it down. And we kind of have to do the same thing over here. So just find this one plane here, extrude this upwards, scale it down. Perfect. And then with all of this, just go ahead and select it, apply the scale, and then we're just going to add a slight bevel to it. Alrighty, pretty straightforward actually. And there you go. Now you got yourself a little fence at the top, and then we can add some windows into this house as well. Let's go up here and then add in a nice little cube. Copy the rotation again. I think roughly that's a good size for the window. A little bit bigger. And now if we do a Boolean and we select our newfound cube that we have here and just apply it, I'm going to do a Boolean, cube, apply. Now we have these cool looking windows. I mean, they're not really cool looking, but they're windows for sure. We can now just select these faces and fill them and then press Y and then press P, and now they're their own object. We're going to do that for both sides here. So fill, Y, and then P, and then selection. And there you go. Now you've got yourself two different windows. I'm going to make these actually just one object here. And then we now need to create the outline of our window frame. And again, I just like to block things out with cubes. And then we can add details in later by adding more cubes. Makes everything super simple. So just getting all that. Let's line that up a little bit. That's right, I did. I just grabbed it instead of extruded. I probably should have extruded it. It's me making like imperfect angles on everything is making this certainly a challenge. Just extrude that upwards now, and right about there. Just grab these two faces there, and then we'll just go ahead and we will use, where's that at? Bridge. There we go. And I think if you right click this and add that to quick selection like he was saying, when you press Q, it just pops up on your menu here. Only thing I might do is add in something like this and do the same on the other side. So now if you select both these sides here, we're just going to add in, you know, a little bit of like a window trim. Do the same here for the bottom. So let's grab this bottom piece. Great. And then now just take this whole thing and we're just going to duplicate it over here. So now we have 2 windows. We're probably going to want to duplicate all of this to the other side. So that's not that difficult. Let's just duplicate these windows here. Rotate them on the Z-axis by 90 degrees. And line them up with where we want them. I would probably say same height. I think that looks good to me. And then we'll just extrude that inwards. And then all we need to do now is then add another Boolean here and select our new cube here and just hit apply. Delete these guys. Now we've got this excess and we're just going to make our windows again. So fill that, then press Y and then P and then selection, and then do the same over here. Join those together. And now we've got our double windows again. Probably just duplicate that, rotate that on the Z-axis, 90 degrees. Yeah, it's good. And then duplicate that again. Now you got yourself some windows up there, and then we can shade those later. We're not going to do any of that today. Let's see, let's go ahead and add in a circle window here. Certainly has its challenges with trying to do all of this on this weird rotation of stuff. How big of a window are we going for here? Something like that. Something like that. Fill that. Extrude it inwards. And let's see. Boolean this. And select our circle that we have. Apply that. Just going to grab this guy over here. Okay. That's weird that it didn't actually punch a hole. But, you know. Well, it did, I guess. That's actually really strange. It probably has something to do with the way I created the cylinder. Which, by the way, I didn't need to do a circle. I could have done a cylinder. And that would have totally worked just as good, if not probably better. If we take this whole thing here and then just duplicate it, probably be able to create our trim a little bit easier. And let's do the same thing for the other side. So select that side. Just go ahead and select these vertices as well. Duplicate them. And then extrude outwards, extrude in scale, and then extrude inwards. And there you go. The other thing we can do also is select all of our vertices that go all the way around, fill it, press Y, P, selection. That way we get ourselves a window again. Fill all of that, Y, P, selection. So now we've got both these windows. Let's go ahead and just join them together. And I'm going to select all of our windows and then just join all of them together because they're all going to be the same material later anyways. For now, though, I'm going to select this. And let's find the spot where we want our window. We're going to have to do something a little different than what I did last time. We're going to have to select all of the vertices on the outside of this. Or more specifically, just the 4 corners. And then go ahead and duplicate those and then fill it. And then with this guy, we're going to go to face selection mode and we just want to select this face here. Let's grab it, scale it down slightly. This is all because I decided not to keep my original cube that was going to be using for punching things in the wall. Keep that in mind. You should just keep your objects and just hide them or something like that. But yeah, let's go ahead and grab this guy and then we're going to extrude him inwards. Whatever distance is that you want your window to be in. Let's see. We're going to press Control L here. Make this its own object. Do I need this window again? I need it one more time. So let's select this guy. Boolean, Boolean, booyah. Select the cube. Apply it. Just move that out of the way. And now should work pretty good. Select the 4 outer edges of the vertices. Hit fill, Y, P, selection. Now you got yourself your own window. We're just going to join that all together. Now we've got this extra window here. Let's go ahead and create this window down there. It's the last window of this style. So yeah, there we go. That's all lined up. Select this guy. We're just going to add in a nice little boolean. Select our cube, apply that. Now I could just delete that. Now we've got this face, delete only the faces. And it creates ourselves an inlet. I'm going to just duplicate this downwards here, just line this up roughly. Now if we go ahead and just select the outer vertices of this guy, hit fill, and then let's just go ahead and make this its own object again. Oh, you know what? We had one more window here. I think it's a different size though. Yeah, we're just going to make it a square window. Screw it, we're making it a square. Gonna go ahead and apply the rotation to this guy. Yeah, we're gonna make it the same square window as that. And all I have to do is do the same boolean thing. Just grab that, move that over here to this other window, scale it down slightly or something. Same thing, boolean. Boom, 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 apply, delete. Fantastic. Now we got ourselves some excess windows. Probably with these, we'll just duplicate the other window and then just scale it down. See how well that works. Okay, great. Now let's go ahead and just select these 4 vertices like so. Fill, Y, P, selection, its own window again. And again, I'm just going to apply this to here. And we're going to do the same thing down here. So let's just go ahead and duplicate this. Yeah, we still got this big window thing there that we can do. Let's see. If I scale that down a little bit. Okay, so then that goes in like that. This is kind of like a porch area. So if this then uses another boolean, just go and delete that for right now. Yeah, that does go all the way through, which is pretty nice. I would say let's grab this here and just extrude it outwards a little bit. So that way it has some thickness to it. And it's like actually kind of a wall. And then we'll go ahead and add in our little thing as well. Let's use a regular cube. Select the house. Apply the rotation. And then I'll create a bit of a trimmed edge here as well. Like on the outside edge. Let's duplicate all of this over to the other side. And we'll just join these together. And let's go ahead and select these faces here and these faces here and just bridge those faces. Okay. And now we just need one down the middle of this. So let's just go ahead and duplicate this. There you go. The sunroom area. Yeah, and then we need stairs over here, don't we? Let's just take our current stairs that we have, duplicate them, scale them down slightly. Line them up with this back exit, which we'll have to create a door for anyways. And from here, we just duplicate a bunch of these stairs downwards. Okay. And then, yeah, let's select this. I kind of want to... Okay, one second. Select all of these real quick. Just one or so vertices. And we're just going to hide those. And next, we're going to select the edges of the platform. And then we're going to say Alt-H. Oh, no, it makes... Select it like that. Grab these. Make those go all the way down. Try to line that up still. And then we need these stairs to continue all the way down. I mean, so as lazy as I am, we still have to do it, guys. Okay, so just grab all of these. We'll grab these first 3 or 4. I think that totally works. Duplicate them and then move them down. Perfect. And then again, select the railing here and we're just going to stretch that out. We're going to have to line everything up though, individually, more than likely. Just grab that, move those up. We're just going to line these up really quickly. If for the most part it is lined up, it's just, you got to make some adjustments. That works for me. Now we just need to work on the other side. So let's see. Let's go into sculpt mode here, fix some of the ground as we're working on it. I'm going to set this back to 5. Just make sure we're saving, guys. And yeah, let's use the draw sharp tool. Create some of these like carpet creases that the miniature set would have. Okay, guys. Let's see. What are some other details that we can add to this right now with just the model? Suppose we want another window up there, don't we? Let's grab this guy, kind of center him up. Just extrude that inwards. We just need another window. Kind of like a little higher. Something like that. And we'll just join this to the rest of the coalition of windows. Okay, so we've got that whole thing. I'm probably going to duplicate this guy. If we just duplicate it, rotate it on the Z-axis, 90 degrees. There we go. Line it up with the next house. Voila. Specifically this guy right there. I kind of want a trim effect up here. So let's go ahead and let's do this a little different than we've been doing it. Let's just add in some edge loops here. I'm going to do the same for the other side. For this side over here. And these aren't perfect, but that's okay. So we're just going to extrude them, scale them out. And that works pretty nicely, actually. Yeah, we're going to have to do this correct over here. So let's add in another little cube. Not a plane, a cube. We're going to select our house, copy the rotation, scale that down, and grab that on the Z-axis, move it all the way up. Of course, our house is at a slant, so you're going to have to make some adjustments. Perfect. Almost. And these vertices here, I think we need to follow that line a little bit. Perfect. Okay, that works fine. I'm okay with this. We have the front door on this side, so let's go ahead and add that in. Cube. Select the house. Copy the rotation. Scale it down. Place it in the right area. Guys, we've got this down. Like, this is easy, alright. Select the house. Boolean. How many times have we done a single boolean on this? Apply that. Delete the cube. Booyah. Got ourselves a doorway. Now we just need a door to put in the doorway, which we can easily do. Fill. Selection. P. Selection. Booyah. 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 Now we have a door there. Now a door frame is all we need. So let's select our outer edge again. I think we could go ahead and extrude that. Let's grab that on the Y-axis and just move that out. Extrude it and scale it. Scale it on the X-axis. Just make everything super even here. And then again, extrude that inwards. Now we just have our door here that we're really honestly not going to see in this render. But we're going to add a doorknob regardless, okay? I don't want any excuses. I always like to start out with like primitives like this because it's not a lot of topology. You know, you're just kind of roughing out like the design of something. Like so. And then, I mean, honestly, then... Is it Control 3? I can't remember. Subdivide surface. There you go. And there you go. Now we've got ourselves a nice little doorknob, which doesn't have to be that fancy. Then there's a few rocks here. I think we have a rocks pack. I think it's under extra objects. So mesh, and then, yeah, rock generator. I knew we had it, guys. So we're just going to go in here, and then we're just going to start adding some rocks. Just go ahead and just duplicate some of these. And every now and then, let's go ahead and add in a new rock, because then it'll generate everything randomly again. Okay. Now let's grab a few of these, duplicate them over here, and we're just going to have a second set of rocks. Great. Okay, so now we have this nice little entrance to our house. Let's add in our little snake effect next. We'll add in a... Oops, not a circle. We're going to add in a curve, like a Bezier curve. Okay. And then that's going to go like under the stairs over here. And let's see. Let's just grab this. We're going to rotate it outwards, scale it up a little bit. Take this one. Now just extrude this. See, this is going to go up into this part of the house, which will then just grab that side of it. It just basically needs to, needs to extrude over top. Okay, so, yeah, it pretty much follows that pretty good. Let's go ahead and add in ourselves the geometry. So let's go to geometry here, and then we'll do depth. We're just going to make this decently thick. And like this one over here, just Alt-S. If you Alt-S, you can scale up on like specific parts. So like this right here is probably going to be a lot bigger than right here. So we can slim that down a little bit. Make that a lot smaller over here. And we don't want any clippings, so we're going to make sure that this isn't going through our house or anything like that. This right here, we'll probably scale it down slightly as well. I don't foresee it needing to be that big. Okay. I think as far as modeling is concerned, that kind of ends the physical modeling. Let's see if we could just test out what this grass texture would feel or look like. We have all of this, of course, but let's see. Yeah, we obviously don't need all this back here, so I'm going to delete all the stuff we don't see. So let's go to camera view real quick. I'm going to select everything from our camera's perspective, and then we're just going to add a little extra dough. And then let's go to select invert, and then we're just going to delete the vertices. Now, the reason why we don't need the vertices is we don't see them. You don't need stuff that you don't see. We actually don't even need this bottom part down here. So let's go back to wireframe again. And we're just going to select this bottom ring. Let's delete all those vertices. Perfect. So now we basically just have the hillside. Let's select our entire environment. I'm going to turn off our particle system for right now. And then let's add in a new empty, because everything is really off on the scale right now, but it's okay. We're going to fix all of that. I'm going to grab a new empty. I'm going to make it a cube. I'm going to make it bigger than everything else. Select everything in your entire scene, except for our 1 centimeter notation. We don't want to select that. Then we're going to select our empty that we just added in, and then we're going to parent everything to it. Make sure to keep transform. Okay. From here, we could scale everything down. So we're going to do that. We're going to find that 1 centimeter marker that we just added a little bit earlier. We're going to say selection to cursor. Okay. Let's grab that, move it up. Where's our centimeter marker? Going to move this over to our scaling object that we have so that way we can actually see it. This is supposed to be 1 centimeter. How big would you say this house is? 7 inches? 7 inches wide? Roughly like 15 centimeters? So if it's 15 centimeters, this is 1 centimeter. Let's just duplicate this upwards. Let's delete that. Let's see. Extrude that on the x-axis. 0.15 is 15 centimeters. So that's 15 centimeters. So now if we just grab this whole thing and we scale it up, roughly, that's the correct scaling. Let's make sure this is not renderable. We don't need to render it. But yeah, so now if we go into camera view, you'll notice that the depth of field is way better or more accurate to what we're trying to do here. So let's now adjust this to be like a 1.2, 1.5. Probably, yep. And then that's going to be decently out of focus while we're focusing on kind of like this here. There we go. I'm thinking the first thing, since now I have Botanic installed, I'm going to try to add a lot of grass here. Let's go ahead and get that set up. I did install Botanic. If you guys have a different grass scatter plugin, you guys can use that as well. There's also ways of using the hair particle system inside of Blender. I did that quite a bit before. You just need to make sure that the blades are created pretty nicely and then have good twist on them in order to make them feel a little bit more natural. But yeah, so there's multiple ways you could do that. But let's go ahead and take a look at this first. So instead of spawning an asset up here, we're going to go down to the scatter feature. And let's see, we're going to find something that works pretty nicely for us. We'll go under grass. Probably want to just go with something like basic, maybe even just regular cut, because we are kind of like going after that look of a lot of uniform. And the way to do that is we will add in a weight paint of different things that we would want. Using the shape keys inside of our data selection on our properties, we can create a new shape key that we'll just call path, like walkway. And using our paintbrush basically now, all we have to do is just create that walkway leading up to the area. Now, I like to have different weight paths for different types of things. We're going to call that walkway, and then we're going to create a whole new group here that we will call dirt or dried grass. Let's call this dried grass. And this dried grass, you know, again, It's going to be like that whole side of the house. And what I want to do is I want to duplicate this. Yeah, duplicate the vertex group. And we'll just call this regular grass, like so. And then now with our weights, we can invert them. And this is going to be all of our other grass that we want inside of our scene. And all we have to do is make sure that kind of like this walkway here doesn't have anything. So let's use the subtraction now. Okay, that should create some nice patchiness. Let's go back over to our object mode. And the first thing we're going to do is I'll go over here to Botanic. We'll create a new scatter plane of our regular grass. So once we hit add, it's going to add it everywhere in the entire thing. And first of all, we're using this is a miniature, right? So we already set the scaling of our house in the last stream to the correct size. And this grass is massive, which is, you know, kind of fine, but we're going to actually fix that. And so now if we go over here, we can actually go ahead and then change the scaling of this to probably be 1/10 of the scale. So if we do like 0.1, that should be a little bit more correct. 0.015. And yes, now we got like really small grass blades here. They're a little hard to see actually. As you can tell, that scale is correct, but we have grass everywhere. And as we were trying to plan for, we didn't want grass in our path area. So let's actually lessen the amount of our grass particles by a little bit. Let's delete that and then make this a 5. So we're actually having the amount of grass particles that we're having in our scene, which is probably going to be more accurate to what we want. Let's scroll down and you're going to see this density option, and we're just going to select grass. Now grass is our vertex group that we created that's only going to be in specific areas. Select that down to 2. Perfect. Let's go back over into our weight paint mode with our plane selected on the ground. So if we kind of do that, we're getting rid of this. This is all based off of how many vertices we have on the ground. So if we subdivide the ground, we're going to have more vertices, which is going to give us the ability to really control more of it. But yeah, as you can see now, we are certainly not getting that there. So with our ground selected, we can first of all disable our main grass. This is going to be our regular grass, which is grass basic. Let's create a whole new scatter node in here of grass, and I'm going to select probably something like dry, just basic dry. Click OK. And again, we're going to have to change the scaling of this. 0.015 I think was what we were going with. Let's double check our scaling options. Yeah, 0.015 is totally fine. And then let's add in like 2 million, or that's like 2,000. Well, actually, let's try use that number first. Change the density option to the dried grass location, and that should look pretty sweet, right? So now we have our dried grass is going to be located here, and then our regular grass is going to be located everywhere else. Right now, our color is set to this like weird dark gray thing. I'm thinking we're going to want to find a HDRI that lights this kind of naturally first, so that way we have this really nice lighting. And over here inside of our color option for our properties, go ahead and select environmental texture, and we're going to go ahead and open up this HDRI. Okay, I am pretty happy with this lighting here. So what we're doing is we're kind of using the HDRI lighting for that general vibe of how we want the lighting to fill on the rest of the environment. But we are creating this harsh directional light using the sun lamp inside of our scene. The only other thing I might want to add into here is it's nice to have like another area light. Let's go ahead and do that. We'll scale it down a little bit. And let's grab this behind the house. I like to have like a nice little edge light onto our objects. This will create a nice little effect here where we're going to catch the light in an interesting way. Since our sun is coming from this side and we have a bit of a shadow here, it's nice to fill this up just to create like a nice edge, especially if our background is going to be a little bit darker in nature. We don't really know what that background's going to look like yet, so why not create that? So I'm going to create a plane down here and scale that up a little bit. And we'll go to side view. And I'm going to go to there. We're just going to extrude this outwards. Probably going to want to rotate that the correct direction, of course. And then make that all the way behind everything. So now if we go to solid view, there we go. Now we got our background plane. I'm just going to put that on the layout. So under our lighting collection here, I'm going to create a new area light. First of all, we have to add in a material. So let's go ahead and add in a material to our cyc. Let's call this cyc. Make it kind of purplish in nature, a bit dark. I want this cyc back here to just a little less roughness, I think, to it. We're going to actually need to adjust the UV size of like how these textures are being affected. And we can do that. This is our base soil texture. So we're going to adjust all of that. I actually think that's a good idea for us to adjust right now. So let's go over to our shader editor and make some adjustments to that. Okay, so for our scaling here, I'm actually just going to pump in a value. So if we just keep this 1 here and then we plug this into the X scale, the Y scale, and the Z scale, we can actually adjust this number here to be like just by dragging it. That way we don't have to adjust each number individually. And we're just going to find a number that kind of works. There are other things that I like to kind of do in order to create a nice little effect on the lighting here. If we go to our 3D viewport real quick, and let's see, we're going to add our cursor to the front. I like to add in a cube. Let's see, we don't want to, let's do this. I'm going to kind of create the lighting a little bit like that. So that way it's still hitting the house. And we're going to make that black. We're also going to make this so that it's not visible. So if you go to I believe our render settings on this, or viewport display as wireframe. And this is currently getting placed under our lighting, which is fine. We're just going to want to make sure that we're not rendering it. So we're going to enable this option up inside of our collections called indirect only. See, I'm going to kind of scale this down and maybe even create it as a spotlight. Although I believe that I am at a 1.5 f-stop, so let's just make this like a 1.8, which is also a decently standard f-stop number. And that looks pretty good, guys. I think the ground there looks pretty nice. We can get away with not having grass, by the way, on these background mountains because they're so far away you can't see the grains of grass on them. The other lights that we're going to want to do are going to be inside of the house. So we have these windows here, and if I grab this, you can move this away. You'll see the inside of the house is hollow, so let's actually hide that. We can look at that a little bit more in depth. All we have to do is we have to select the inside of this and we're going to delete the vertices. And that's going to open that all the way up. So let's just select all these faces here and delete the vertices. Can we do this better with like an area light? Yes, we can. If we scale that down, we can just make sure that it's on the inside of this house. There's some like weird bug where it's actually like clipping through. It's kind of interesting. Customize distance. I've actually never used the custom distance thing. Oh, there we go. Okay, 0.04. Oh, it's that line there. And then now if we go back to our solids here, and then we select our solids and we create a new material, we can actually change this to be a glass material. And the light should shine through there, which it's not. I figured it out. I apologize. We're in Eevee. I was like, guys, why are we not seeing through this glass? It's because Eevee's freaking stupid. That's why. Okay. That's why we use cycles here. But this is basically going to give us the ability to duplicate this light and have it in different parts of the house. So with that being said, we now kind of have this first one finished. Let's duplicate this and move this over here. And then also downstairs as well. So let's go ahead and duplicate that and move it over to the downstairs bedroom over here. Let's create a new light. I'm going to create an area light. Yeah, an area light can work. Let's use an area light, scale that down, rotate it this way. And now we've got this really extreme light that we can literally see right there. And we're going to want to increase the power of this to be pretty high. And then our overall density fog that we have, let's go actually throw that in lighting. Our density fog that we have, we are going to want to select it again and then just change the a few of the settings. So I'm going to actually vertical split this so that way I can actually work a little bit better going back and forth. I'm going to increase the density. And there you go. Now you're going to get some nice fog in there. Now with our lighting, we did disable all of this stuff earlier. So we're just going to go back and re-enable it. we still want it to feel kind of dramatic. You know, we're trying to catch this side of the house and make it feel a little bit darker. And with that might be adding another area light in, for instance. And then if we just place that on this side of the house, you can really see what it's going to do by, if we make it red, you can see where exactly that red light is kind of affecting. We're just trying to create a bit of a shadow. So this is one way to add a shadow that I have found pretty effective, is to add a light over here and then just make it a negative value. These windows are a little too see-through for me. So we're going to go to the roughness option here. We're just going to increase the roughness a little bit, and it's going to create them to be a little bit more rough. And that way we're not quite seeing through them as much. Down here, you know what? I do want to have some kind of light coming out through this porch area. You know, I do feel like if you had a miniature, you should be able to have a light in there. Let's do a point light. Let's do 50 milliwatts. And then let's just make that kind of blue. I like that. We want to have a bit of a sunrisey effect going on in the background. And we can do that. So let's see. Our psych light that's back here. What are you doing? I do love that you're like basically not affecting this back wall at all. There we go. Let's get you down here a little bit more. Make that a little bit brighter. We're just going to create kind of like this horizon effect. And then we're going to change this from square to disc. It's going to make it round. I do like that up there. I'm thinking though, even with the top, we're going to want it to be kind of like a dark purplish color. So if we select our psych, you know, we're kind of able to control a lot of that by what color that initially is. And then just even making that darker here, which is making it way more dramatic. Okay, so we kind of have to do some texturing on this now to really see how the house is going to react to everything else. And then we can, you know, render some stuff out, maybe put some effects in there. We're going to want to have like a bit of a smoky atmosphere to everything. And we're going to create our own ring pattern. First, let's do that by opening up Paint. MS Paint. You guys all have it. It's fine. 1920 by 1080. That's all we want. It does have to be square. That's the only problem. So now all we have to do is halfway through our effect here, we're just going to, or halfway through our image here, we're going to select that. Yeah, we're going to add in black. And then halfway through our image here, we're just going to select that right there. Delete. Is that halfway through? It is. This material here, we're going to go ahead and save. And we're going to call this Stripe 1. Let's call it Stripe 1. And now let's go ahead and add in an image texture. Find today's stream and the material folder and that Stripe 1 effect. And if we go look at that Stripe 1 effect, it's going to go all the way down the center, which is perfect. That's actually totally fine for us right now, because we have this little vector option here. And if we go ahead and add in some mapping and texture coordinates into this, we can actually make some adjustments. So first of all, we're going to want to rotate it by 90 degrees. So let's go take a rotation of 90 degrees on the Z-axis. Is that what it is? Yes. And now you can see that it's doing the whole thing by 1, which again, totally fine, because currently our scaling is set to 1. And as we scale this out, then it's going to create more and more stripes. So we just take this value, plug it into the scale, and then we zoom this up, and then we're going to get more and more lines. We could do that, or we could actually just plug this value directly into our base color, and that's going to be the white and black values. And then if we go view this, it's actually going to create a whole shader with that effect there. So now the lighting is all going to go on the correct spots. If we want to make any adjustments to the roughness, it's going to adjust everything overall rather than us having to have two separate principled BSDFs. So we can create our own custom roughness. Let's do that. We could either paint it on. Yeah, let's see what this looks like. We're gonna paint it on. So if we go out of full window here, first of all, we're gonna create a new image texture here. Add in a new image texture, create new, and this is set to 1024 by 1024. I'm fine with this being a little bit larger though, because this is going to be something that we're actually using overall the entire character. All right, so we're going to set this to 4096 by 4096, and I want to change the name of this to dirt. Let's call this snake underscore dirt and then underscore matte. I'm going to create a new image and we're just going to view that for right now. So go ahead and just select that color input and you'll notice that everything is black because by default, when you create a new image, it just makes everything black. So for right now, we're going to have that selected and then we can go paint on everything that we want. If we go over into our texture paint window here, it's going to give us some different options. First of all, we want to select that snake dirt matte over here inside of this window. And of course, it's all black as I was mentioning before. And then we're also going to want to select our snake, okay? Because that is specifically what we're trying to adjust here. Oh, is it because this is a Bezier curve? One second. Let's swap this to object. We're going to convert this real quick, guys. Convert this to a mesh. So now it's going to be a mesh so we can actually paint onto it. We're going to swap this from object mode over here to texture paint, and that's going to give us the ability to paint onto this object here. So this is texture 1 here. So let's go to the texture window here. Hit new, and you'll notice that this is image or movie, so we're going to need to load in our surface imperfection. And obviously we have 6K all the way down to 1K. I'm just using 1K for our paintbrushes. I want to make sure that the rake is selected as well as random is selected, so that way when I'm painting, it's actually painting it in kind of like a nice path. All right, so those are the couple settings that we're going to adjust. I think now we're good to go. Overall, now if we just paint it on our image here, we'll be able to see our effect as we're going along. But now that we have this matte, let's go back over here to the layout option, and we're going to use this matte to drive in some dirt and grime. Okay, so first of all, let's plug this bad boy here. I'm going to use probably a color ramp. And the first thing we're going to want to do is everywhere that's black, we don't really want it to be black. We already have like this 0.5 here is the overall texture of our principal BSDF. I think that's kind of like the baseline where we're going to want things to be at, okay? Which means that this black here needs to be set to 0.5. And you can set that value here by just typing in a 0.5. That's what 0.5 looks like. And then white is kind of going to be the areas where everything is going to be really matted, and that's set to a 1. But now you just take the color value of this and plug this directly into your roughness, and you're going to have some more specularity adjustments to everything there, but you're not finished yet because we want to use this matte to basically drive our color as well. I believe the best way to do that would be using a whole separate principal BSDF here. Probably going to do just like a darker gray value, maybe not full black. Let's make the roughness completely set to a 1 here. And then using this snake matte effect, we're going to use a mix shader effect. And between these two principal BSDFs, we want to have that effect. Now using this snake matte, we can now plug over here into the FAC, and that's going to give us the ability to actually add in kind of like that grimy dirt effect. And if you want more, we can always add the contrast to it as well. So, and which we're going to do, okay? So go ahead and add in a color ramp, and then make sure that out of this snake matte is going to here. And we're going to make this a little bit more contrasty. The more contrasty it is, the more visible your dirt's going to be on your snake. We're going to kind of create like this overall wooden texture to everything with these slats. We're going to need to find some materials for that. I'm going to select our house because that's the first thing that we're going to add our planks onto. We're going to create a whole new material for this guy. Let's call this planks house. Okay. Inside of our planks house, we're going to import our textures, which all we have to do that is just drag over our images, use the displacement, normals, and our roughness. And all of these are probably sRGB. Let's first take a look at these planks just to see how they're oriented. Yep, they're really screwed up. And actually, that's probably because our UVs are really wrong. We use generated for the vectors, it'll give us a different result, and normals is going to give us a different result, but we want UV, okay? Because the way we're going to set this up is we're going to UV unwrap our house to have the correct amount of textures into it, and how we want that to be oriented. Let's take our house here and let's select everything and then say Smart UV Project. Let's just see how this first does it. Firstly, does it really wrong. So we're going to spend a little bit of time doing UV unwrapping right now. So if we add in like a saturation after this color, we can actually remove the saturation of our planks and just make them grayscale. You can also increase the value of these if you want them to be a little bit brighter. You can increase the contrast if you want a little bit more grime and dirt in there. The cool thing about this is that it just gives us general planks. We're going to be adding in some very specific dirt in specific areas, just like we did with the snake, but we don't have to do that right now. But now, yeah, if we plug this over into the base color and we go ahead and view that, we're going to have our planks onto our house. We want to make sure we use this same texture coordinates that we were using for everything else, okay? So we have our roughness. Let's go ahead and plug this into the vector, and then this gets plugged into the roughness of the house. That'll adjust the amount of roughness that something's going to get. And then next up is our normal. So again, plug that vector in. And then we're going to plug this over into our normal output. But again, before we do this, this is an image, okay? So we actually have to convert this to normal data. So if you select normal map, plug this into the color of that, and then plug this over into the normal, then you're going to actually get like a nice 3D effect to your wood. Now that's going to kind of get pretty close to finishing off our effect there. Next up, we have displacement. So let's go ahead and plug our vector over into our mapping there, and then we're going to take this displacement effect, and then we're going to create a bump. We're going to plug this into the height, and then the bump over into the displacement, and that's going to give us the ability to create a little bit more of an effect on your wood. It's very subtle, but it helps when you're doing your renders later on. Just make a new material here and call this trim. Whoopsies, caps. Let's go find a different wooden texture. I want like something, I don't really want seams on this one though. Now load in our picture as well as our displacement, our normals, and then our roughness. We're going to do the same thing we did before. With this weather displacement here, we're going to want to do a couple things. Let's, first of all, let's add a value of a little bit higher of a number. And we're going to see what is really going on here. First of all, we need to unwrap our texture. Okay? So in order for us to do that, we're going to select everything. And then we're going to do cube projection first of all. Let's just see how well that does. Going to add in a color ramp. Let's see. Add a little bit of contrast here. I actually don't know how much. So as far as this other texture goes, I think that actually works pretty nicely. We're going to just add a little bit more contrast to everything here with this roughness. We're going to use a normal map, plug the color into that, and then plug this into your normals. And then there you go. That's going to finish off that trim effect. And there you go. That should give you a really nice little wooden trim effect. The only trick now is going to be adding that to everything else on this house. So we are using a sun, but we can also add in additional lighting. I'm thinking we were probably going to have to do that anyways. So let's go ahead and add in another area light. Just rotate that here. Probably a little bit more sidey, because again, we're just trying to create that edge there. Scale that down. That way it creates a really nice... You don't want it to be too big because it's too soft, and then it like kind of blows it out and doesn't have as much texture to the lighting. I'm going to select these outer edges here, and I'm going to add the trim to that outer edge. I think that looks pretty nice. We're going to have a separate texture for this boardwalk area. Let's see. What are we doing? We could have a lighter wood color. So let's select that. I'm going to create a new material here. We'll call it plank floors. Floor planks? Plank floors. I'm going to select that now and make sure the planking floors are selected. Okay. And then inside of our materials, we'll go ahead and just import everything real quick. So we have, of course, our diffuse, displacement, you know, all the normals, guys. We got everything, man. We got everything. We're going to use normal map here and then plug the color into the color and then plug that into the normals. And then that's going to give us our wooden grain effect. And then again, we're just going to go ahead and use the same vector for our displacement. Whoops. And we're going to go ahead and add in a bump node. I'm going to use a curve, RGB curves here after this color ramp. And we're just going to lift up the color of this kind of like stair or walkway area. We don't want it to be quite as dark as the rest of the trim. So we're just going to lift that up a little bit. Now our stair railings, we're not going to want them just to be white. Instead, we're going to want to have some kind of wooden effect on it, but I do want it to be white. Okay, so let's see, what do we want to do exactly about this? So we have wood peeling. I kind of want to maybe use this. So we're going to use the texture here for this. We have the normals as well as the roughness. I'm thinking we're going to use the roughness, we're going to use the normals, but we're not going to use the actual diffuse of it. So if we plug roughness directly in, what do we get? I'm thinking we're going to want to really see what this is doing here. Select our railing, add in a effect here. We're going to want to adjust the color ramp of this. Let's just view this real quick. And then we're going to increase the amount of roughness that we're really having. I'm going to actually select everything and say Q projection. Yeah, it works. And that's going to go into our white texture there. But also, we're going to use that for the actual shading of everything as well. So we're going to use a mix color, I believe. And then plug this color ramp into the factor of that mix color. And then I'm going to keep the white effect here. And then we're going to do like a bit of a darker gray. And then now if we go view this real quick, we're going to actually plug this color of this into the factor of it. And we're going to create a little bit of the effect that we're going for with the wooden effect. And we're just going to move that back a little bit. Plug this into our base color, and then now if we view our base color, it's going to have this wooden texture effect on kind of like this white railing, which is totally cool. Now we're going to use these normals, which again, we're going to use the exact same vector path that we were using before. But this time again, just normal map. So that way we could plug this into our principal BSDF, like so. And that's going to give us our white railings that are painted now, just like pure paint white. You know, we can use this same effect on everything, of course, because we are using railing. But we are going to want to select everything here, probably select everything in it. And then we're going to press U and then just make sure you're doing Q projection. But we are going to want to maybe add in a little bit more dirt and grime to this. That's totally fine. So we're going to create a noise texture. And in this noise texture, we've got different options. I'm probably going to want to select terrain. And if you view this, it's going to be kind of like this big kind of like warbly effect to things. So we're going to probably do something like that. Pretty big, you know. And then we're going to make it a little more contrasty from what we currently have. So we're going to make the white real white, and then we're just going to kind of black out the areas that we don't want. And then we're going to create a whole new principal BSDF. We'll just make that principal BSDF be up here, and it's just going to be a darker color. We can even use another noise texture if we wanted to do that for this. But for us right now, we're just going to use this principal BSDF. I'm going to use a mix shader node, and we're going to plug this into the bottom of that, and then this here into the top. And let's just make this at the bottom. So our dirt is going to be on the bottom, and our regular texture is here. And essentially, we're now going to be using this mix shader with the factor from this noise terrain that we have. So take the color there, and then we go ahead and view that. So now these stairs are going to have a little bit more texture to them. If you want, you can actually plug in some different texture like images or something like that into this area in order to create a little bit more realism to it. But for us, I think we're fine with that. If we select our ground now and then turn the grass on, I'm curious how this is going to look. So we're going to display everything real quick. Let's add some shaders onto these back mountains here because the whiteness of them is drawing me out a little bit. So we're going to add a new material back there. And honestly, it doesn't really have to be anything crazy. We're just going to select the green of like one of these grass here, just roughly the same color. And it's just going to be back there. It's way back there. Go ahead and select mountain over here as well. Let's do a little bit larger though on the grass. I think maybe making it a little larger will be nice. So we're getting grass. It's just dry. So we can adjust the amount that we're displaying so that way we're not killing our computer, but we can still see some grass. Let's do this dry grass here. We want to make sure that we're not getting any dry grass in these like patches for our grass. That way it's pretty consistently straight here. Next up, we're going to add in a new area light. And we're going to just move this upwards a little bit. And we're just going to orient this to just be a little bit more on the ground here. We're going to scale it down. Holy cow, this is a little laggy, guys. Let's get this inside light. We still have this point light that I think is on the inside here. It's a little dark now. And then we're going to find our material of our close fog that we have here, and we can go ahead and import this. Material, you'll notice that it imported a material as well, and that's this guy right here. So if we go ahead and view this directly, we can actually see exactly what it's doing. You can always just offset things and whatever. I'm going to try to find a frame that I need. You can kind of see that it's right there. Might need to scale that down a little bit. I think I like that for that. And then now using this, we can actually create our own transparency and all of that. So we have a principled BSDF. We could plug this into the base color so that way we actually get to see it. And that's going to allow us to make some adjustments. So let's use a color ramp here and go from the color into this, because there is no alpha on this stuff. So we're going to create our own alpha from the actual smokiness effect that we have. And the more contrast that this has, the more visible that smoke element is going to be. And again, we can probably add in some detail to this as well by just using a noise texture and then changing this from FBM to like a hetero texture. This is going to give us like this pattern that we can play with. So maybe that's what we want with like a nice little color ramp. And on our black value here, we just lift that up so that way it's darker gray, and can adjust the amount that we're seeing here, probably wanting it to be a little bit more or less. We want the fade to be pretty nice. Let's add some more detail. So this darker gray value could then just lift upwards, so it's pretty close to the same value, but it just has a little bit of a different color. Plug that into our base color, and now if we go view that, it's going to actually give it a little bit more shading to our cloudy smokiness that we have. Wait, I don't need a color ramp. I need curves. Then just making it a little bit darker. If you use a mix color and then you plug both those on top of each other there, and then do the factor, and then instead of mix, we're going to do multiply. You can actually change this color to be, if it's pure white, it's going to be whatever this value was. It shouldn't change at all. But now what this gives you the ability to do is actually add in like a color. So if we want this to have like, you know, purplish smoke or something like that, we can actually do that, because if we're like thinking about this, it's going to have this purple light here. So maybe we want a little bit of purple smoke that's kind of coming across. So we can actually duplicate this now and invert it, rotate it a little bit. And it's actually not the back wall that it's casting a shadow on, by the way. What it is receiving a shadow from is on these planes that we just added in just behind the house here. The other thing we could do is, this is the one that is casting the shadows. So we just always put this in front of everything and then scale it down. I want to find like a rock texture. If we add in a new material, I'm just going to call this a rock. And we're going to create some procedural rock textures. So first of all, just grab in the default values that we want to have here. And I'm going to plug all of these guys in. Swap that to a normal map, I think. And then finally our displacement as well. But we're going to need to swap that to a bump. And this needs to go to height. So this is our rock that we are adjusting here. Okay, so then we'll just do this as object. Objects should get us pretty close. I mean, we're getting a little bit of weird clipping things going on there, but that's, or stretching anyways. But we can adjust that by just making this value a little bit smaller. Now, with that being said, we want to plug this vector into all of our different image textures that we have. Now, this is not procedural, so this value here is the only rock texture that we're ever going to get. So let's do this. We're going to do a mix color node, and we're going to just plug that in there. And then this value here, we're just going to have that pure white right now. And under our mix option, let's just change this to multiply. Okay. So now with the factor set to 1, we should have our diffuse texture here multiplying against a white. value. I don't understand why it's black. So if we go... Oh, you know what? It's just because it's very hard to see, I think. Here's how we're going to do this. We're going to do object info, and using this value here, we're actually going to now use a color ramp. And all of this is going to be back here, by the way. So then we're going to take random, and we're going to plug that into the factor of this color ramp value here. We're going to change this to a constant, and that's going to give us these, right? These different points that we can add into our color ramp. And so if we are plugging random into the factor, it's going to select a random point on this entire spline here of what we want our colors to be. So for instance, if you multiply it against black, that's basically math for saying multiply this against 0, because it's a 0 to 1 ratio of how you're multiplying things. So if we plug this as the value of 5, this value is going to have 5, this value is going to have 1. So when it hits anywhere that's here, it's going to multiply by 5. So in this particular instance, if we plug color into the B input of this, instead of it being that 1 value, it could be a 5 or it could be 1, depending on what the random index value is of this specific rock. And all we have to do then is just add new points in. So we're just going to go over here, add another point in, and this value can be a value of, 3, and so on and so forth. So now if we take this multiply and replace our base color with this, we're going to get random values depending on what those are. So if we view this principal BSDF, let's see what this looks like real quick. Let's select that and just set that to the view. This is going to be our rock number 1. So now if we go ahead and select this rock here, and we go out of full screen view over there and select rock, it's possibly going to be a different value than this rock, which gives us the ability to use the same texture for multiple different rocks and get different results every single time. Let's create some of the texture painting on the walls of the house, and I think that's like kind of the last thing before we render this out and send it to composite. I'm going to select our house now. So if you select the house, let's add in an image texture. Let's just go into here real quick. We're going to hit new on the image texture, and then we're going to call this house dirt, and do 2048 by 2048. Hit new image, and let's go ahead and view that guy. Oh, which we're on plank floors. That's my bad, guys. That's my bad. Let's, we have to make sure principal BSDF is set to view. We'll need to select our house texture, which I believe plank's house is it. So now if we go into here and we add in image texture, and we already have the house dirt photo, so just go ahead and select that guy. Set that to view, and now everything will turn black, which is good because we're going to create ourselves a matte. Now you could do this procedurally with noise textures, but I do find it to be better results if you go ahead and do this yourself. We're going to go ahead and first save this. We might actually have to start over here in a moment, but let's go back over here to layout, and inside of this we've got our vector here. I believe we can have multiple UVs. I think so anyways. If we go ahead and swap this to a UV editor real quick, and we go ahead and just select everything, you'll notice how it's all over top of each other. It's just crazy. We can do UVs, and I believe we can create a whole new UV. So like this is a UV map right here, whereas we can actually create new ones, which I've actually never done, but I wanted to. So let's try this. We're going to call this dirt. So here's our new one. Oh, and you can set the visibility of it here. That's really cool. Okay. So now let's just make sure, yep, dirt is selected over there. Press U, and then we're just going to do follow active quads or smart UV. I think smart UV is probably the best for this particular instance because we're painting it on in a specific method. The only other thing we're going to need to make sure of though is in our shader editor here, this needs to be using specifically the UVs of, yes, needs to specifically be using our regular UV map into the vector of our texture, whereas our dirt is going to be using a different UV map. I think that's the way we're going to be doing that, right? Yep, all of our planks are in their correct order. And if we swap this to dirt, everything will get screwed up. So now we have two different UV maps. And we can call this default texturing or default texture. And so now we have default texture and we have, which I realize you guys can't really see that, but there's this UV map section right here. So I have default texture and then I have our dirt texture here. And we could swap between these all we want. Select default texture. And so now if we go ahead and select dirt texture, it's not going to change this UV map here, but we can now use this to go paint our effect onto it. So let's go ahead and select our house dirt here. And I'm thinking we're going to want to plug in a UV map of the dirt into this. So let's plug that into the vector of the house dirt texture here. And then having this as the eyeball selection, when we go over to our texture paint node, it's going to be using those UV maps to basically be doing all of our paint work. Now, unfortunately, we're going to have to start over on our grime painting that we already did, but hey, that's just good practice. So let's go ahead and do a mix shader node, and this mix shader node is going to go between our principal BSDF there and another principal BSDF that we are about to create. So let's go ahead and create that. Let's do principal BSDF and let's just make this black, and we're going to plug this into the bottom value of this shader selection there, and then the FAC will be from this house dirt mat that we created. So we go ahead and view our mix shader. It's actually going to primarily be our main principal BSDF with a little bit of grime added in below the windows and such from of what this principal BSDF is. Now, if we want to make that a little bit more visible, we can add in a color ramp, because these things tend to not be contrasty enough. So you can go and add a color ramp in after your image here, and then we can just make that a little bit more visible by dragging that down like so. And that's going to make everything quite a bit more contrasty. And then of course, just drag that up. We're just going to try to create an, pretty decently contrasty image here of what we're going for. And if you go view that over here, you'll notice that all of those stains are now coming through on your model. So check this out. So if we duplicate this principled BSDF, we use the exact same base color that it has. We use the exact same normal map that it has. We're already using the same displacement, and then the roughness goes in here as well. All we have to really adjust now is if we do a curves adjustment, like an RGB curves adjustment. I can actually just plug that in here. Put that down there. If we make this pretty dang dark for the color that's going into it, and then we replace the black value of our principled BSDF, now it's just making a darker version of our wood texture. And it's actually using that exact same wood texture that it had before. Whereas, let me show you. If we replace this, then it just kind of makes it smooth, which looks a lot less realistic. So now if we just take this and then we replace that shader there, now we're getting dark planks, which is actually like stained planks, which work really well actually for what we're going for. That's pretty good. So let's go ahead and do that and keep that there. And let's just add in some more detailed paint over there as well. So I think also we might want to do our roof here. Let's find some roof textures real quick for this top roof. Again, just plugging all this in. Now, the thing that we're going to need to keep in mind is that we're using this UV mapping here, but now that we're doing it, we got to get the texture coordinates from the actual UV map location of our house. Okay, so the default texture, we're going to plug that into the vector here. And then we're going to want to adjust everything appropriately to what we're doing. So our value, for instance, probably want to set that to something like 5, plug that into the scale. And, that's pretty good. Might actually want it a little larger. And then we're going to use the same coordinates for everything else. So this gets plugged into roughness, for instance, and then we have our normals as well as the normal map, and then our displacement. How flat does that look? That looks super flat. So one thing we're going to have to do maybe in order to compensate for that is this needs a lot more resolution to it. If we take these and then we press Y, we can then subdivide these. So let's just go ahead and subdivide them. And then with our texture here, we're actually using this displacement here with a strength of 1. We can actually use that. Right now it's only using displacement of bump, but we can actually change this value to be using more than bump. So under our settings, it's saying bump only. We want to use displacement and bump, and that's going to give us the displacement of what our bump is really doing. So now the only thing we really need to adjust though is we need to multiply this number. So if we use a math node after this bump here, we can use it to multiply our value by a smaller value, and that's going to do quite a bit less of our explosion of our bump. So let's go ahead and just view to see what this is really doing here. You can kind of see what the strength of this is really doing. Try plugging this into a normal map, and then plugging the normals into the normal, and then the normal into the displacement. That's probably correct. And then changing our strength here to like a 0.01. But we're going to use the UV of a default texture. I know there's the other way we could do it is actually using displacement, but I feel like we're going to have problems with that. So if I go into our modifiers, we can actually use a displace modifier, and then we can create a whole new material, and we can actually load our texture in. For instance, I can actually do this over here. So we're using like texture 7, and then we can load in our roof tile displacement, and then under our strength we could just make this quite a bit less. And then the other thing is we're probably going to want to create a vertex group. So let's go to our data option here. Let's create a vertex group of just these guys. So let's hit a vertex group, and then we're going to also scale individually real quick. I want to just scale them upwards. And then the next thing we're doing is we're just going to be adding the displacement of this using the vertex group of roof. And that way the only thing that's actually being affected is our roof, which it looks like. Perfect. Let's bring that back. I don't know that. See, here's the thing. So it's coordinates local. If we use UV and then we select this to default texture, then we increase this guy, this should now be correct. There we go. Yeah. And so that's going to give us some roof tiles, kind of. Interesting. I don't hate it. I don't really like it either. Let's try a value of a 1 with the mid-level of a 5. Don't like it. Sometimes in life you've got things that you don't like, and I don't know what we're going to do to fix it, but let's load our image texture of our dirt house. And what does that look like on here? Did we really do anything? No. And then if we go over into our texture pane of it, and then we do paint in some stuff, I'm thinking let's go ahead and select, that's probably okay. Honestly, I like that. And then let's go back to layout. And then we're going to use this, actually, this texture here, to affect this RGB curve. So we're going to do a mix color before this base color here. And then we're going to plug the regular texture back into B. And then using this house texture, this dirty house texture, we're going to plug that into the factor of this. And then if we go view this real quick, you can kind of see what it's doing. It's creating a difference between the lighter tiles and the darker tiles. And then now if we go view our principled BSDF, we're going to get some variation in our effect. Probably just want to use a color ramp as well for this factor, and just create a little bit more contrasty. So some of the render settings I like to do is I like to enable crypto mats for when I render these things. I'm not rendering with an alpha channel, so I don't need to enable the film pass. And that would, if you guys do want to do that, that's here. You enable transparency. We're not doing that though. Next up, max sample settings. I'm just going to set to 1024, which honestly is more than enough. You don't need 4096. You really don't. It's too crazy. Which, by the way, all these project files will be up on the Patreons immediately after this stream is over. And now if we go ahead and load this up, we're going to shuffle the correct channels in. Swap that to combined. Now, my question is, let's see. Is my color management set correct? We're using OCIO custom. I actually think I screwed up my color management. So you guys are going to see how I do this anyways. Go to app data, local, and then we're going to find Blender Foundation. Blender. Wait, where is it? I thought it was under app data. It's not. Well, this isn't good. There we go. Color management. Copy paste this here. There we go. Color management. Config. There we go. So this should be 1-for-1, which it is. Perfect. Potentially the only problem was that when I saved it, I said follows scene, which we could just double check this real quick. But if we re-render this now with Ace's CG as our thing, it will for sure be Ace's CG. I did set like the output color management space to Ace's CG, but that only works with Blender's animation thing. It doesn't work with the default. So when you just render it, copy paste the shuffle node, and then let's just, okay, they're both the same. Perfect. Just wanted to double check. Now, we're going to do a little bit of comp work, guys. Just a little bit of comp work. I don't know if I do have virtual lens, so let's go ahead and first do that. We're going to add in a nice little virtual lens to this thing. We're going to do a little bit of work, guys, just to make this look beautiful. We're also going to add in a lens distortion, so let's do that real quick so that way, you know, we kind of know where things are going. That's going to be a little bit more of a barrel distortion right there, but if we go in a negative number, you know, like we can create this to feel a little bit more like we're in the scene. You can see the difference there. It's like really stretching your image. Let's make this quite a bit more, but like mix it less. And then veiling glare. Let's do that. Oh man, that's nice. Adds this nice little extra glare at the top. Oh, super sweet. And then overall halation though, that adds like kind of like this effect there. I think that's pretty sweet, but we're just going to want it to be smaller. Maybe not that small. Like a 1 could do. You know what? Maybe a 2 is right. We just want to mix it back in. So pixel aspect ratio, let's just make that a 1.5. I think that could be cool. And then let's just mix that back in slightly, so that way we're still getting that fringing that's happening there. Real cameras capture that, especially with light that's kind of coming through the lens. And that just adds a little bit of extra realism to your shot. And we'll use the regrain feature. And I'm going to change the grain size here to be quite a bit smaller. 0.5, 0.3, I'm thinking of like a 0.4. And then after our regrain, we're going to add in a grade node. And we're going to add in a little vignette, okay? So like I like to do it this way. So we're going to add in the grade node. We're just going to do like a shape. Probably do an RGBA on that. Add a blur into it. And then change this to like a 500. And if we go look at that, you can see kind of what it's doing. And if we go into our grade node here now, we can actually just make this darker. Now we want to invert our mask. That's going to bring that down. The other thing you can do, I like sometimes, is taking a saturation and using the exact same mask. And again, invert your mask, but then just desaturating it slightly, so that way it's desaturating on the vignette. I feel like that kind of gives it like this kind of cool effect, where the more color is in the center of your image. Some other things I like to do with this is, after this virtual lens, we're going to mix, and I'm going to create a little dot there. We'll take a blur node, and if you go view this blur node, we're going to blur this by like 500, right? Like some large blur amount. And then using that, let's just swap that. We're going to then screen this back, or plus it. We're going to use a screen actually. We're going to screen that back over top of our image, and then using this mix we can actually lessen the amount of that, but this is going to just kind of give us that atmosphere that we were potentially going to have a little bit earlier, but now it's just going to kind of give us that effect that we wouldn't have otherwise had. And we could do, the smaller the value of this size is, the more it feels like it's coming from that window. With this, we were trying to maybe get like a little bit of a window kind of like effect, And we can still do that. So let's add in a constant. And I want to, first of all, let's set our project up a little bit more. We're using this as our main root size there. So to get this constant to be the correct size, it's a little bit easier doing it that way. But now with our shuffle node, let's go ahead and select kind of this green effect that we have, right? We're really going for this green effect. And we want to use a merge node here with a roto. And we're going to paint on kind of this like blast effect, right? So like you want that. And then if we just pre-malt that, should get like that effect that's basically coming from this constant that we created. And all you need to do then is just add a dot in, and then we're just going to merge this over top of our main image. Just going to use a plus probably, and we can lessen the amount of this, but this is going to be kind of like that window effect that, you know, we could have added in Blender, but like, you know, you can easily just do things like this inside of Comp as well. So we're just going to duplicate this now and just grab it and move it over. So now we got both windows kind of having the same light shine out of it. Let's go ahead and duplicate it again. And let's duplicate it again, guys. You can never go wrong with duplicating it again. I'm just going to invert it, use it over here. It's going to be a lot less subtle, or a lot more subtle, I should say. I think that's it, guys. So this is going to be the final image for creating Beetlejuice inside of Blender and Nuke. You guys can download these project files. They'll be over on the Patreon. I'm going to upload them immediately after this stream is up. But anyways, I'll see you guys back in a couple weeks. You guys have a good one. Again, hit the subscribe button and the like button, and I will see you guys in the next one.